Hello, bowling fans. This is Dustin J. Marquez coming to you, as always, from the gem along the Colorado River, Laughlin, Nevada, bringing you yet another edition of your favorite bowling show, Bowling Evolved. Joining me, as always, is one of the premier left-handers in PBA Tour history, one of my good friends, and really still one heck of a bowler, as he proved at the World Series of Bowling, still finishing in the top 100, the one and only Eric Forkel. Eric, how you doing tonight?
I survived. I survived. I'm still here. I got through it unscathed, physically unscathed. I did come down with a cold halfway through it, but that's not neither here nor there. But physically unscathed, mentally, well, I'll be all right.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a good place to say I need to talk for the show this week. And, obviously, Eric, I mean, I know it was a little bit of a disappointment not being able to cash in the World Series, but, I mean, I could speak for at least myself watching you bowl up there. I was pretty impressed with the way you threw the ball. I mean, considering some of the guys that were out there and still being able to finish in the top 100, I think that's still a testament to your bowling ability.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, there's 250 players in the field, and I think overall I ended up like 92nd. So you're right. I held my own. I wish it would have been better, but it's amazing. I've been away from it for about 5-6 years now, almost 7 years, and certain things have changed out there, but certain things are still the same. Some of the top players obviously still play well, even though they're a little bit older. Age hasn't seemed to have affected them too much, maybe because they bowl out in that environment all the time, or that's the reason why they're so good. But it was definitely challenging. It's nothing like what I bowl on, whether it's in league or, of course, or like in local tournaments, they put up conditions and patterns. It's hard to get that same environment that the pros play on, especially with the guys, the way they throw the ball with their incredibly high rev rates, the way they break the lanes down, and what actually happens out there. And it was very, very interesting to go through that again. Like I said, it had been about 6 years, so it was fun at times, a little aggravating at other times, but overall I got out of there unscathed, I guess you could say.
Well, like I said, as an observer, it was really exciting to see you throw the ball up there. Obviously, I've seen you throw the ball before, but in that environment, it was kind of the first time for me. And I do want to say, first and foremost, a big thank you goes out to Tom Clark and everyone that was involved with the PBA who basically treated us extremely well when we were up there in Las Vegas. And I have to say, from a media standpoint, it was a very open and very fun experience.
Yeah, I think they did the right thing, of course. They want as much attention as possible. So now that we have our Bowling Evolved, get your foot in the door there, that we can do some of our podcasts from there, and you can do some of your interviews. I think it's terrific exposure, and anytime they get some free advertising, so to speak, I'm sure they're going to like it. And for the most part, all your interviews went very well. They're on our website right now, and I think it's a win-win situation all the way across the board. It's too bad they don't have those more often for the guys in general, but I thought it worked out pretty well. I mean, they had a full field. They had a waiting list. At one point, I was on the waiting list, and I still managed to get in. So it was very popular. I bowled the 2 regionals afterward. At least in those, I did get checks in those, so that was okay. But they had waiting lists. They had waiting lists for those as well. So I was kind of surprised, but there was quite a lot of people wanted to bowl. They wanted to compete.
Absolutely, and as you said, I mean, there was a lot of bowlers out there, and I think that the tournaments were very successful in that everyone really did seem to enjoy themselves. You mentioned the interviews that I had a chance to conduct up there, which I do want to mention to our fans that if you have not seen them yet, they are up on our website at bowlingevolved.com, on our YouTube channel as well, or of course on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/bowlingevolved. You can see any and all of these interviews as we're putting them up. As of right now, I think there's still a few we are still in the process of getting transferred over, and I do want to make a quick note. I know a few people have written in saying that there was some problems with the quality of the video. Unfortunately, we had some issues in post-production transferring from our camera to the computers. The audio is all intact, of course. I mean, you can still enjoy what they had to say, but we do apologize for that. Live and learn, I guess, Eric, would be the best way to put that. Hopefully next time will be a little bit better for us.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, like anything else. I mean, the audio was very good. The video was okay. I mean, it could have been done a little bit better, but hey, it's a learning thing. You're on the fly. You're trying to pick this thing up, and I looked at it. I thought it was okay. You could definitely see who you're talking to. I mean, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but I thought it was good. It can always be done better, and I'm sure if the opportunity arises next time, we'll know how to do it a little bit better.
Very much so. Bowling evolved, as we always say, we're the evolution of bowling, and I think that's part of our show as well, is that we're constantly evolving to find what our listeners want and what we can do to improve ourselves. I do know that as far as the interviews went, I mean, it was really just a fantastic experience, and I do want to talk about a little bit of that. I mean, I had a chance to speak with several, just amazing competitors up there, Jason Belmonte, Walter Ray Williams, Dave Waka, Brett Spangler, Tommy Jones, Ashley Galante, Barry Gurney, Mike Scroggins. I mean, just some big names from some varying different fields as far as bowling goes, and very different opinions. And Eric, I know you had a chance to watch all the interviews, and I just want to reflect on a couple. Biggest thing was we had some very interesting thoughts and opinions on the game versus sport debate that we talk about here every other week or so.
Yes, I'm sure. I noticed you took quite joy in getting me on that on every interview, but that's okay. You know what? That's okay. You had fun with it, and that's good for you. But I think the part I still believe this. I think there is definitely a recreational game part to this thing, and there's definitely a sport part to it. Obviously, the guys who compete out on the pro tour and who bowl overseas in these high-end competition events, you would have to consider that a sport at that level. However, the rest of the game, whether it's open play, recreation, birthday parties, and all these leagues, I still feel that league bowling, to me, is more of a game than a sport. Now, they do have sport shots. They have sport leagues. Well, obviously, then that would be a change there. But I think there's two sides to it, and I think Dave Watkin mentioned that because we had a little go-around on Facebook over that same topic, and I thought he described it exactly the right way. There's definitely a recreational side of it that is most obviously a game, and then there's the professional side of it where those guys treat it like a sport, and you know what? Because it is in that regard. But I think there's just two sides to it. I noticed that, Tommy Jones says that I was wrong for saying that, and he was adamant about that, and that's fine. Maybe once he gets done bowling the tour, and he bowls league a couple times a week, and he drinks his beers, and he hangs out with his buddies, maybe at that point he'll look at it as a game. Right now, to him, of course, it's a sport. Walter Ray feels like it's a sport, of course. That's okay. I mean, that's all right. They have that opinion on it. I'm just saying I think there's two sides to this whole thing, and I don't think it's all a game, and I don't think it's all a sport. I think there's two sides to it. There's no doubt about it, because absolutely the competition this past week, especially if you made the finals, you bowled an unbelievable amount of games. I mean, that's very sport-like, of course. The average Joe couldn't really do it without really having some physical problems on the lanes. So that just adds the credibility to the sport aspect of it. So yes, the World Series of Bowling, you could say, is a sporting event. But bowling in general, like I said, these other factors of it, I kind of look at that part of it as a game. And it can be a complex game. I never said it was an easy game. It's a very, very difficult game. But there is a fine line there. But, certain players, they have their opinion on it, and that's fine. And that's okay. I see Mr. Spangler agreed. He thought the whole thing was a very complicated game. So, again, it just depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, I was going to say Mr. Spangler definitely agreed with you. Dave agreed with you to some extent as far as the recreational side of it.
And that's the way I would take it. And that would be, to me, that is the proper way to look at this. But the people who are out there doing it week in and week out and doing it, then they're going to really say, no, it's a sport. This is a sport of bowling. Okay, well, all right. I mean, do you consider golf a sport or a game?
Ooh, you know what? I think it kind of depends on the level you're playing at. I mean, same thing. You know, if you're playing professionally, you're lugging your clubs back and forth across, you know, the entire tournament.
That's what the caddy does. That they don't lug their club. Your caddy carries your club.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know. I mean, you tell me. I'm just saying. And that's an eye-hand coordination game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that's a tough question. I mean, it's like the people that argue that poker is actually a sport now. I mean, now I think I draw the line there that I don't consider competitive poker playing a sport. Now, I do agree that it takes an immense amount of mental and yes, some physical ability as well to be play for hours on end, but you know, at the same time, you can do that with, say, like, what's the popular one? World of Warcraft, the people that play in front of their computers for 12, 15 hours, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I think maybe I would draw the line there. But as far as golf goes, it's I guess, like bowling. I think it's really depends on how you look at it and what level you're playing at. And
I think, I said, back in the day, I'm talking about like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, maybe there was a lot more guys bowling, or because more guys on tour who weren't in the greatest of shape, you know. But you don't have to be in great shape to you can be in what I call bowling shape. I mean, you could go out and bowl a lot and not really look like you're in shape. But bowling-wise, you could be in great shape. But to physically look like you're in great shape, bowlers have never really looked that way. But I would say in the recent years, they've definitely gotten into more shape or more conditioned, I guess you could say. They don't look like they're, out there, like your league, like a how can I say, the stereotypical bowler, drinking beer, smoking, big gut, all that kind of stuff. The professional bowlers, they definitely do not look like that, especially nowadays. I don't know if they ever really did look like that, to be honest with you, because most of the top players were in pretty good shape, bowling-wise, and they didn't look like they weighed 400 or 500 pounds. There was a couple bowlers who were a little larger who bowled very well, but in general, the good majority of them, 85, 90%, they were in pretty good shape physically, looking to be able to bowl a lot. But a few cocktails afterward, that's a different story.
I agree with you, Eric. I think that, it really just depends on the level you're playing at, be it golf or bowling, of course. And I really would highly recommend to our listeners to take the opportunity to watch some of the videos on the different opinions from the bowlers that are on tour every day and see what they have to say about the game versus sport debate and see, what they think and how they relate to what we've been talking about for literally months on end at this point. But we got to take a little break right now. When we come back, we're going to actually be discussing the different patterns that are out there. Eric is going to fill us in on his experiences bowling on the 4 different animal patterns, and we're going to start breaking down the future of the PBA. Stick around. Hey, Eric, have you had a chance to check out the new bowlingevolved.com yet?
Well, Dustin, yes, I have, and I think you should too. It's one of the best podcast shows on the Internet.
Oh, I know you're not just saying that because we host it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dustin J. Markowitz and Eric Forkel for the Bowling Evolved podcast, telling you to check out the new bowlingevolved.com for all the latest news, rumors, videos, and more. Check out bowlingevolved.com.
And we specialize in the past, the present, and of course the future. Come check it out. It's one of the best.
Welcome back, bowling fans, and as we were discussing before the break, we're going to break down the 4 patterns a little bit. And Eric, you had an opportunity to bowl on the 4 different animal patterns out there, and you really had a chance to experience what the quote-unquote new PBA is all about. And so tell us, what was it like bowling on the 4 animal patterns, and how would you relate it to some of your experiences of the past?
Well, the best way I can describe it is speed and revs. I noticed that the last couple of years when I watched, and obviously I saw it this year when I competed. Nowadays, it just seems to be valuable, especially on the Pro Tour, to have more ball speed and more revs. That's why, hence, the two-handed bowlers they do very, very well. They're good at what they do, and they just create a little more area. They create more hit. They create more carry. And the game has definitely speeded up, so to speak. In other words, 18 miles an hour used to be the normal speed when I was out on the Pro Tour. Now I think it's more like 19 or 20 miles an hour, to be honest with you, in general. Now, there's still guys who throw it a little slower, but overall I would say the pace, the guys who throw the ball faster, 19, 20 miles an hour, that seems to be quite the norm out there. And overall the conditions kind of go in that favor. In other words, there's a lot of friction on the lane. First pattern we bowled on was the cheetah, probably the highest scoring pattern, and it really was. The scores were very, very high. I mean, I myself, the first 4 games I averaged over 240, and I was in the hunt in my squad. And then I hit a couple pairs where I didn't do the right thing, and my scores dropped. And the next thing you know, I was completely gone. I went from nowhere in a game or two, just eliminated. And you just can't let down. You know, you've only got 8 games, and you got to average darn near 235, 240. I mean, you can't have any bad games because the guys are very, very good and the scores are very, very high. But overall, the biggest thing I noticed on all the patterns, whether it's the cheetah, the chameleon, the viper, the scorpion, speed was pretty much of the essence if you were to bowl well on all the patterns and get yourself into the top 24 to qualify for the World Championship, which they have there as well. Years ago, the World Championship used to be its own tournament. You would go and you'd have qualifying and then finals. Well, now they kind of take the 4 animal pattern tournaments, and then they take the top 24 scores out of there, qualify you for the finals of the World Championship. So that's where they get that 5th tournament out of the 4 that you bowl, which I'm not overly thrilled with that myself. I think that should be its own tournament. I think you should qualify for that and then have a finals. I don't particularly like the fact that they just throw that thing in there based off of how you did on the other tournaments. But again, that's where my old school mentality comes out. I would like to see it that its own major, that it's its own tournament, you qualify, because that was a different pattern, by the way, which I thought was awkward. They had a practice session before. You bowled on all the 4 different patterns, and then they had a practice session as well for the World Championship pattern. Well, the only time you're going to bowl on the World Championship pattern is if you make the top 24. So I noticed all the pairs that had the championship pattern out there, hardly anybody was practicing on it, because why would you practice on a pair that the only way you'd bowl on it is if you were fortunate enough to be in the top 24 out of 250 bowlers? I thought that was a little peculiar, just my opinion. But again, that pattern plays completely different. So they qualified on the 4 different patterns, and then once they got to the match play part of that, by the way, the only match play part of the entire event, that all of a sudden they're bowling on the World Championship pattern, which I thought was a little peculiar, but so be it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, too. Now, obviously, for our listeners that have not had a chance to look at the results on the PBA website, I will say this is a big-time spoiler, so I would recommend, I hate to say this, I'd recommend pausing or muting the podcast for the next few minutes as we talk about the results here. Eric, is that a bad thing that I'm turning away our listeners? I don't know.
Well, I say, I guess it is. I mean, the bottom line is they've already got this information up on Facebook. It's already up on the PBA site. So, I mean, it's, you know, that's part of that's the biggest downfall of not having live events and having them streamed the way they are, because people are going to find out who won. Even if they didn't have Facebook, people would have found out some other way. I mean, people know that there were people that are watching, and they're either going to text their friends or email or whatever. You're going to find out. You can't keep it a secret. It's just not going to work that way. This stuff doesn't air till December, January, or whatever, but all the results are out, and obviously we know who won on the 4 patterns, and we know who won the big major, and we know who won the the World Bowling Association, and we know who won the men's, and that's fine. So I mean, that's the problem when you tape things, and you know what the outcome is. That's just the way it is.
Well, I will say this though. Like I said, this is our spoiler, but basically, Cheetah Championship, Bill O'Neill. basically blew through the competition on that pattern. Was that a surprise to you at all, Eric, that Bill really, I mean, he's a phenomenal bowler, don't get me wrong, but, I mean, he literally just tore them apart on that pattern.
No, I mean, it's not. I mean, obviously he's a very good player. He's been out there, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years now. He's been out. He's a seasoned veteran. He's got 3, 4 titles, whatever he has, and he's been bowling well. So the fact that he can get on that cheetah pattern on the show and go through the field and average 240 or 50, whatever he did, not a surprise because, you know, they put a couple lanes behind. They didn't bowl in the bowling center. They had either 2 lanes or 4 lanes in a behind it in this exhibition hall, I think it was. And you have brand new lanes, which is that they're in better shape probably than the surface that they bowled on because those lanes are a lot older. So you have brand new lanes. You had nice kickbacks on the side, and everything is ready to go. So if you have a nice pattern out there, there's no reason why the score shouldn't be really good. And from what I could see, they were.
Absolutely. Moving on, we had Brad Angelo winning the Viper Championship, which I believe was the second time he's won on the Viper Championship, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I find that interesting. His 2 titles have come on Viper, and Scott Norton, who won the Chameleon, his 2 titles have come on the Chameleon, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of the Chameleon Championship, I will say, at least in my opinion, no offense to any of the bowlers, but I found the Chameleon Championship probably to be the most exciting of the animal tournaments, only because of the variety of the 4 finalists. You had Jason Belmonte, Walter Ray, Scott, and I'm going to butcher his name. I believe it's Fawaz Abdullah, I believe is how they say it.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, he's the first Bahrain. He's from Bahrain or Bahrain.
Yeah. Yeah, first one and made it onto the show. And, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't there to see the event, but I got the play-by-play, and I had a chance to talk with Scott. And it's just an amazing how that came out. That's one that I very much look forward to seeing here in December when they broadcast it. I think that's going to be a very exciting tournament to watch.
Well, from what I read about it on Facebook, they talked about it. They said it's a very interesting show, and it's a very interesting show for a couple other reasons. I mean, obviously, we both know about Scott. We know that he's proud of being gay and being a gay athlete. And supposedly on the TV show, he talks about that. And I think that's probably one of the first times in PBA history that I could ever think of them discussing a bowler's sexual preference on TV. So that will be unique. I'm looking forward to seeing that myself.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that's one thing that I will say about Scott. I remember the article when he came out, and I've always been of the belief, who you are in a personal life does not define who you are as a bowler, as an athlete. And I think that he has been able to open up the eyes of a lot of people that are I guess the word would be negative towards that light, and he basically said, hey, this is who I am, and it doesn't stop me from achieving what I want to achieve. I think that's a very strong statement, and I think it's a very good statement.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I know they talk about that, and the fact that he's also an attorney. He got his license a few years ago, so it gives the PBA something to talk about besides just the fact that he loves to bowl. His mother is a Hall of Fame bowler, Virginia Norton. So obviously he's got some pedigree there, and it's not surprising, and he's an excellent bowler. He didn't have a great year last year, but the year before he won his first title there. So he's had pretty good success at South Point. He's won both his titles there, and it's good for him. Again, he throws it hard, a lot of speed, good hand action. That seems to be the trend nowadays. It does appear that way. That's the way it has gone.
I think you just like him because he's a lefty. That's just my opinion, but
well, to be honest with you, I really don't care what hand people throw the ball with. If they throw the ball well and they're good players, I never really have. I just think they throw it good. Like, for instance, obviously I roomed with David Ozio for all those years. He threw the ball great. It had nothing to do with him because he was right-handed. He just threw it great. If he threw it that great on the left, he would have won as well. Who knows? He might have won more. It's hard to say, but he threw the ball great, or he could have been shut out a lot of the times, and maybe he would have won less. So there's just different ways of looking at it. But I think if you have good mechanics and you throw the ball well and you can repeat shots, and Scott definitely does that, and most of the good players out there, they do throw the ball well. The only differences is the guys with the two hands, they're in a unique category. There's just nothing like them. So they have that extra element that nobody else can do. Just like we talked about years ago when Mike Miller was the first guy to take his thumb out of the ball and be really, really good at it, and then along came Bob Benoit, was the next one to do it. But they revolutionized it at that time because nobody else could do it. Well, and just I remember when I was out there, Bob Vespi came out there, and Bob Vespi, he put his thumb in the ball, but he looked like a palm bowler. He could hook that urethane ball across the whole lane. Well, when reactive resin came out there and got going, then all of a sudden a lot of guys could hook the lane, and a lot of guys could blow the pins around. And now the advantage was gone. And with the two-handers, I don't know where you go from there. I think that's as far as you can go. They've taken it to that level because, again, it's not something that you want to tell everybody to go do and learn. It's not easy to bowl with two hands like that. That's very unique. I see a lot of people do it, but those guys are very, very unique and they're very good at it. But a lot of people try to do it, but they're not very good at it. But those guys are exceptionally good at it. And I don't think you have to take your thumb out of the ball to bowl well. But I do think to be competitive in today's game out there, I think if you can throw the ball 19, 20 miles an hour and have good control of what you're doing, I think that's a bonus. I still think nowadays ball speed's the key. There's always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, the top players throw the ball with really good speed.
Oh, absolutely. And I know when I spoke with Jason, I'd asked him about the two-handed bowling, and as he put it himself, it's the way he was born to bowl, and he would never discourage someone from doing it, but you have to find your own style. As I've said and you said, and we've talked about before, I don't think any two bowlers are the same, and I think that you could obviously try to emulate different parts of people's games to find your own game, but ultimately you have to bowl your own game. I don't think anyone can be exactly like Walter Ray Williams Jr. or exactly like Eric Forkel or exactly like Jason Belmonte. You have to be exactly like who you are, and I think that's something that hurts a lot of league bowlers that are trying to make that step to the next level because they try too hard to be something they're not.
Yeah, correct, and especially when you go out there, when you have to play what they call your A game. There's guys out there who've got an A, B, C, and a D game. They have all kinds of games. But then there's guys who are kind of specialists. They're good at throwing it hard and straight. Then there's guys who are really good at hooking the whole lane. What I have seen, what has transpired over the last so many years, the guys who are really, really good, they've learned how to do a little bit of both. They could hook it, they could throw it straight, and their arsenal has had to evolve and get larger, whereas I kind of thought like back in my time out there, the really good straight players, the Roger Bowkers, the Butch Sopers, I'm talking about especially the guys on the right, the guys who could play real hard and real straight, there are certain patterns out there that they would just destroy. But then when you had to get inside and hook the ball quite a bit, like Kelly Kaufman, Steve Hoskins, the guys who can really put revs on the ball and hook the ball, then those guys did do so well. Then those guys would scream for a while, and then they changed the pattern down the road. And the way they used to do the lanes, they didn't really have patterns back there per se. They just had different environments that the lane man would create, but they didn't have the named patterns back then. They just did the lanes. They either had inside angles or outside angles. When the lanes were hooking, the guys played out. When the lanes were slicker, they moved in. They didn't call them all these names like they did in the last 10 years. They didn't have that before. But certain players were better than others on certain patterns. That's just the way, on certain conditions, I should say. That's just the way it is. And I think nowadays, you have to be a little more well-rounded. You have to be able to do more things. And the equipment has definitely become much more technical. There's a lot of guys throwing a lot of new equipment this week. All the companies have new product, and you'll see balls guys were using in the World Series of Bowling that aren't even out on the market yet. That'll come out maybe in a month or so. I mean, it's just an equipment war, because if you don't have the right piece in your hand, you're not striking the way you need to be. And that's what I found, at least for myself this week for sure. My ball choices were fair at best. I didn't make the right decisions with the equipment, and it really slows you down, and especially against those guys. You can't blink, and they run right by you. They're that good. And that's just the way it is. It has changed. The technical side of it has definitely become way more important than it really needs to be, but it is. There's no way around it. And you definitely need some eyes behind you out there. You need people scouting some pairs and watching your ball motion, and they got to get the right equipment in your hand to give you a good shot. If you don't have that, you're really working really hard to try to find a way. That part has definitely changed since the days when I was out there.
Well, it's kind of funny you talk about the equipment and the way the game's changed. I mean, I will skip ahead a little bit here as we're kind of running low on time, but I do want to mention the World Championship. Of course, your friend and just arguably one of, if not the greatest left-hander in PBA Tour history, Parker Bohn III, obviously going the gauntlet, so to speak, qualifying 24th to make the match play, qualifying 5th to make the show, and then running the gauntlet to win the PBA World Championship is obviously a huge story. After he missed the practice squad, too, because of the Hurricane Sandy and whatnot. Eric, I mean, I honestly, if you were going to talk about an underdog story, so to speak, I mean, you'd have to say that's probably one of them. Not to take away from Parker's ability, of course, but, considering his age, his experience on the tour, and what he had to go through, I don't think the PBA could have asked for a better World Championship.
No, of course not, because he's a great ambassador for the game or sport. Parker's 49 now, and his physical game has always been one of the best. And he hadn't won, I believe, in 4 years, and I believe it's his 33rd title. And the last time he won was on the cheetah pattern, which was always shorter patterns were always good for Parker, even when I was out there. And the World Championship, I think, is was a 40-foot pattern, but obviously he found something. And when he qualified 24th, and like I said, we didn't bowl on those lanes in qualifying. You qualified on the animal patterns. And then once you start match play, now you're bowling on the World Championship pattern. So really, they're all kind of starting from scratch. In other words, you got 24 games, and 24 games with 30 pins bonus per game to win. You could do a lot of damage. You can definitely move up. And I think after the first 8 or 16 games, he made a pretty good move. So he was in position, and that is not surprising at all. Because once he gets dialed in, even though he's older, and not as young as he used to be, obviously, once he gets dialed in, he can still throw a lot of strikes. And he's still a great repeater, and he still makes great shots. And obviously, I think the Brunswick balls they've really made a pretty nice return. They seem to be doing very, very good the last couple of years. They had a bit of a lull, but they seem to have come back kind of strong. And Parker's been with Brunswick for 20, 25 years, 30 years. He's been with them forever, it seems like. And he obviously last year at the World Series he didn't do as well, but this year he did much, much better. And obviously by winning the World Championship, the $50,000 plus some incentives, I'm sure, from Brunswick. Oh my, he probably made $70,000, $80,000. I mean, he had a tremendous week, and that's like makes your year. That's a guy who used to average over $100,000 a year all those years in a row, and honestly, the last 3, 4, 5 years have been kind of rough for him. So this was definitely a big shot in the arm, and I'm sure him and Leslie will gladly take that nice paycheck.
I'm sure they will, too. Listen, bowling fans, we got to take another break here. Stick around. When we come back, we'll discuss the PBA League and the updates coming to Bowling Evolve before we sign out. Stick around. Hey, Eric, have you had a chance to check out the new bowlingevolve.com yet?
Well, Dustin, yes, I have, and I think you should, too. It's one of the best podcast shows on the Internet.
Oh, I know you're not just saying that because we host it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dustin J. Markowitz and Eric Forkel for the Bowling Evolved podcast, telling you to check out the new bowlingevolved.com for all the latest news, rumors, videos, and more. Check out bowlingevolved.com.
And we specialize in the past, the present, and of course the future. Come check it out. It's one of the best.
Welcome back, bowling fans, and yeah, like I said, we've been recapping the World Series of Bowling and the experiences we've had up there. Obviously, from a bowling standpoint, Eric has been able to relate a lot of the great things and the differences on the tour from his heyday to now. And then, from the media standpoint, I've been able to hopefully give you a little bit of insight on how we were treated. But now let's talk about something that also occurred at the World Series, which was the PBA League. And Eric, I know we had talked about you had offered to I believe it was Bob Johnson, the idea of a PBA League several years ago, and now here we are. It's coming to fruition, and the teams are drafted, and here we go. I mean, is this going to be the next big thing?
Yeah, well, it was interesting when it came up. I spoke to Bob Johnson, who writes for the Bowler's Journal, and I've known Bob for a lot of years back in Southern California when he was involved with the Pacific Bowler, and he was a bowling writer who covered all the bowling events, scratch events for sure, and I used to talk to him all the time back in the 80s and 90s and when I went out on tour. And maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I ran into him at Bowl Expo, and we just started talking, and he says, what are your thoughts on the PBA now that you've been away from it from a few years? I said, well, it's hanging in there. I says, the way things are going, I said, who knows, maybe they need to go to some sort of a league or something like that to create team bowling like they have at the collegiate levels and in other pro sports. And people seem to get behind teams. And maybe that would be a way to create some emotion and create some following and get some sponsors and backers and maybe get your city or your community behind it and just create some interest. I said maybe they need to go back to the team bowling concept of back in the 50s, right before the PBA started. And he said, well, maybe so. We talked about it, and it's funny. Here we are, 3, 4, 5 years later. It's come to be that they're going to give this a try and see how it goes. It should be interesting. They have to do a Baker format because obviously they all can't bowl a game because they'd be on for like 6-7 hours, so it would take too long. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping for their sake. I hope it goes well. I think it's interesting, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Well, definitely interesting to see the teams that got formed up. You had obviously some of the more notable picks that go out in the direction we thought it would, and then there was definitely some surprises, at least in my estimation, that got picked. Not so much because they aren't good bowlers or anything like that, but just because either they were snubbed or they went down lower in the draft, or they were picked. It was just interesting. We were talking a little bit. A friend of the show, and then someone that I've known for a long time, Mr. Dave Waka. I think Dave is a heck of a bowler, but as we both know, I mean, Dave was not really on the scene all that much. I mean, he made a show, I believe it was last year, but he went ahead of Eugene McCoon, as we talked about, and that was, at least from both of our estimation, kind of a surprise.
Well, I find certain things a little surprising that they did, but I mean, I'm sure there's reasons why. I don't know the criteria of how they selected all the bowlers on each team. I know that I think 2-3 weeks ago, if you wanted to, you could submit your name within the PBA to the draft if you wanted to be drafted. And I'm assuming everyone who got on a team, I guess they submitted their name. So if you got picked, so be it. But I don't know how the team captains or whoever's in charge of the team, I don't know how they did the picking. So I wasn't there. I just saw the results. But some of the results looked a little interesting. But, whatever. And certain guys, especially the guys who didn't get picked, well, of course they're not going to be too happy because it stops them from getting a chance to make some extra money because it's a separate prize fund. I believe the team captains get like $5,000 or $10,000 or something like that. They get like a guaranteed paycheck, And, all the other players, they're playing for their paycheck, so to speak, from the way I read it on the website. So the team captains, I believe, get a nice chunk of change. All the other players on the team, it's how they perform. So it's kind of strange that way, but so be it. Whatever.
Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, and I'm not, believe me, I'm not picking, Dave Walker as a teammate. Believe me, I would take Dave Walker on just about any team I've ever put together in my entire life for everything. But, no, I found it odd, how some of the picks went, and, I'm sure they picked for the reasons, just like I thought some might go a little bit higher in the draft than they did. But, I guess that's why I draft. I mean, I'm sure everyone's played a fantasy football game or a fantasy baseball game at some point, and seeing how sometimes picks go the way they do. So, hey, I'm very happy that we're going to have this opportunity. I think it's going to be very exciting to watch, if anything.
Well, I hope so. I mean, Dave obviously he works for Ebonite and he does all his sales repping stuff out here on the West Coast, but he still bowls quite a bit. He bowls almost every regional. He bowls all the local stuff, and he obviously bowled the World Series, so he's very competitive. He bowls in a lot of events, so he's definitely bowling everything. So it's not like he sits behind the desk and then just goes bowling once in a blue moon. I mean, he's constantly bowling, so he should be physically ready to go compete in this event. So I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons why they picked him as well, because he is very active. The thing is, he just doesn't actively bowl on the tour per se like all the other guys out there. He's not bowling every event over the last 3-4 years like a lot of the guys out there. And there's certain guys out there who are competing full-time out there, and some of them did not get on a team. And I'm sure they're probably not too thrilled about it, but, that's kind of the way it goes. That's how the cookie crumbles, so to speak. So it is interesting, but hopefully for all of their sakes that it goes well, and it actually catches on. I mean, who knows? I guess it's a bit of a gamble, but that's what they wanted to do, so we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, and I wish them the best, and like I said, I hope that the ones, the guys like, for example, I mean, even like a Mike Machuga or, Dick Allen or, some of the guys that you just haven't seen on TV all that much in the last couple of years, Jesse Buss, I hope they do very well. I hope that this is a fantastic opportunity for all of them, Dave Walker as well, and, I hope this, for bowling in general, that this gives it another shot in the arm, as we like to say. It's definitely something unique, if anything.
It is, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's going to give it a shot in the arm or if it's a bit of a gimmick, or I don't know. I mean, it was just something that Bob and I talked about 4 or 5 years ago, and I said maybe that is the new way to go. But they're actually adding this thing on to the regular part of the tour where they're going to be, and I think it's in Detroit. It's going to be similar to the World Series, but done in that area. They're going to bowl this in like one venue for a couple of weeks. I think they're going to have singles events as well, and then they're going to have this team thing too. So that's going to be a very busy time. So guys can go there for the singles portion, and then of course if you're on a team, then you're in the team event as well. So I mean, I actually thought that they would do it just strictly team bowling. That's all there is. I thought maybe that would be the way they were finally going to go, to create the teams, but everyone who was on a team would get paid. It would be like the professional ball players or whatever. They're all on the team. They're all getting paid. Not just the team captain gets paid. Everybody gets paid, and a good amount of money and that's how. But you got to be on. You got to get picked to get on the team. And once you're on the team, it's like you get out of the draft, and now you're going to be making a good living throwing a bowling ball. That was the concept, but this is done a little bit differently. But it's sort of what we talked about, but still different. Now, who knows? It may come to that one day, but it's hard to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I wish the PBA and all the bowlers the best of luck, as we said. As we're closing out the show here, I do want to say first and foremost, thank you very much to all of our listeners and all of our new fans that might be joining us for the first time. I know we've expanded immensely since our trip up to the World Series. We've actually had on the podcast and on the website, I mean, just hundreds of new and unique visitors. So if this is your first time listening to the show, thank you very much for joining us. I know we definitely appreciate everything that you guys are doing to help support looking at the game yesterday, today, and tomorrow. A lot of cool news things on bowlingevolved.com. We actually have, the website is now fairly up and running as far as what we want to start seeing on there. I know we have a full archive of all of our podcasts. We're going to have the videos, including here shortly some of the videos of Eric when he was out on tour, some different things that we had done at the World Series. I know we're going to be putting up a photo gallery in our affiliates page here shortly. Plus, we're also going to have the archive from my writing experience, the What Happened to Bowling archive. That is up and available on the website as well. And some great stories that were done about us, especially from Fred Eisenhammer, which, by the way, I do want to thank Fred. We did have another story come out about Bowling Evolved. I don't know if you had a chance to read that yet, Eric.
No, not yet.
Fred wrote another great piece talking about his experience on our show and us going up to the World Series. So another big thank you to Fred. Definitely check out his work on theexaminer.com. A lot of fun stuff there. But yeah, I mean, this is really starting to take off, and again, it's all thanks to you, the listeners. We can't thank you enough.
Well, and I think it's great, and I think if anyone did have a chance to come out to the World Series of Bowling last week, I'm sure you hopefully you had a great time. You did see arguably or definitely the best bowlers in the world, and there was quite a few bowlers there. And I think Mike Moniak and his staff put on quite the event. I mean, it's not easy to host an event like that, and I think Mike did a great job along with all the people who worked there, and my hat goes off to them. South Point is probably the most, you get the most action here in Las Vegas. In other words, all the scratch tournaments are there, some of the best scratch leagues are there, all the good scratch events are there on Saturday night, so it's definitely kind of a mecca. It's turned into a bit of a mecca here in Vegas. It's where the pros bowl, and it's where all the events are. It's become quite famous for that. And I know they've had the World Series there 3 years in a row. I don't know if it's going to be there next year, the year after, but I know they're in the process of building. They're going to be building that stadium there, and I think that opens up in I think it's 2015. I believe it's going to open. So the World Series maybe won't be back until then. I don't know. That's just my speculation. But I'm pretty sure when that thing does open, I'm sure the PBA will definitely want to. Hopefully the PBA is still doing its thing in 2-3 years. I'm sure they'd like to come and definitely play in the arena that they plan on building there. That's really supposed to be something special.
Absolutely, I believe so as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to take us to the end of our show. Once again, I want to say thank you very much for listening in. Next week, we'll be going back to a little bit more of the traditional formats. We'll have some more fantastic guests coming on the show to discuss the world of bowling. I know Eric and I have been kind of working around the clock to get some of the best and brightest from the world of bowling to appear and answer the questions that you, the listeners, have. And remember, if you have any questions for us or anything you'd like to see on the show, things you like, things you don't like, hate mail for Eric, as we always talk about.
Always hate mail for Eric. That's okay. Somebody's got it. That's okay. I can handle it.
But, yeah, remember, you can always get a hold of us either via email at bowlingevolved@gmail.com, on our Facebook page, which is probably the easiest way to get a hold of us. That it happens to be the most active part of our listening experience, so to speak, which is facebook.com/bowlingevolved. Of course, to our website, bowlingevolved.com. Or now we do have the mobile app, which is available, the Bowling Evolved app, which I got to say, definitely unique. I don't think I've seen any other bowling show that actually has us yet. So kudos to Tyler for that, huh, Eric?
I think that's very cool, and I'm just saying, I think what we're going to have down the road, we're going to have some merchandise. We're going to get merchandise that people can get their Bowling Evolved merchandise. That's going to be something that's going to be coming. We're going to have to work on hats, sweatshirts, and whatever. Got to have your Bowling Evolved merchandise. We're going to have to look into that. I think that would be kind of cool too.
Well, yeah, merchandise is definitely something down the road. We will, in fact, in January. That's part of our incorporation, so to speak. I also will say that Bowling Evolved will be getting involved with several bowling tournaments coming up next year. which I can't give a lot of details on yet, but we will as they come available. So yeah, I mean we're going to be expanding the brand, so to speak. So like I said, this is all thanks to you, the listeners. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be doing this. And I hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed doing the show. I know this has been a great experience for me, and Eric, I hope it's been a great experience for you as well.
Oh, it's experience, that's for sure. Anytime I get to chat with you on this thing, now that's an experience. But I think I actually enjoy doing this. I realize how much fun I actually am having doing this, and who knows where this can go. You never know. It's the sky's the limit, so to speak. So, and hopefully we're giving our listeners some good information, and whatever we need to do in the future, we'll definitely do.
Yes, and I also do want to say to our listeners that are coming in now from 7 different countries, which our analytics have shown. Gotta say, I never thought we'd be downloaded internationally, but thank you. That's all I can really say. I don't know what else to say about that one, Eric.
Well, that is kind of unique, knowing that people across the world, all over the world, get to hear us talk about bowling. That's kind of cool when you think about it. And again, we're giving you our opinions. Obviously, it doesn't match everybody else's opinions on a lot of things, but it is definitely our opinion. And that's what it's all about. There's pros and cons to everything. We can't all agree on everything, and we're going to have our views on it. But hopefully, it's to listen is interesting, maybe somewhat provocative, and hopefully very educationally learning. My good friend Barry Gurney, he came out to watch me bowl this week, and we were talking about the lanes, the surfaces, the cover stocks, bowling balls, all these things, and angles, and it's really interesting to watch the top players, what they have to go through. And we may have to do a show just on cover stocks and lane play and what balls to throw and when to throw them and how to throw them. It depends on what style you have, and maybe we could take a whole show on that. Maybe we'll have some ball guy, guru, come on here and give us their company's opinion. Maybe it'd be Dave, or maybe somebody from Storm, or even somebody from Motive, or whoever, Brunswick, whatever it is. We may have to do that and just have somebody come on, and we could talk about those kind of things, because it is quite interesting. It's a science of its own, so we may have to get into that.
Well, every week is a chance for us to explore a different topic, and as I said before, you, the listeners, are the ones that direct us on this journey, so if there's something you want us to discuss, something you want us to dive into, please let us know. I mean, we went to the World Series because that's something that will interest you. We've gotten people on the show that you have ran in to us about, so again, that's our goal. But that's going to take us to the end here, so for Eric Forkel, I've been Dustin J. Markowitz. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great night.
Good night.